Hello everybody, we made this video to explain a little bit more about the higher respect form. Using honorifics and higher respect forms are the beauty of Korean language, but sometimes it's very hard for non-native speakers to use them properly. Let's make it a little bit clearer with this video. When you use a simple higher respect form, you might not have a big problem, but in Korean, in many cases, you need to combine two or more predicates in the sentence. What kind of predicates we are talking about here then? Was there any predicate you needed to add extra thing at the end? Yes, there was. There are a lot of them in Korean actually, but let's check out the three of them that you've learned from our lessons. When we use present continuous tense, we add 고 있어요 to the stem of a verb. And when we use future tense with the modal will, we add the final 르 consonant or 을 sound and 거예요 to the stem. And when we use the future tense with the be going to, we add the final 르 consonant or 을 sound and 예정이에요 to the stem. 예정 means something prearranged, and it's a noun. So be going to actually means it is prearranged in Korean. Anyway, the point is, these endings also have predicates such as 있어요, 예요, and 이에요. 거 of 거예요 is a part of the predicate, but it is actually not a predicate. It's the shortened form of the dependent noun 것. We'll learn about it later again. When we make a higher respect sentence, we at least turn the verb or sometimes adjective part into a higher respect form. But there are two predicates when we use present continuous or future tense. Then which one should we turn into the higher respect form? This is a very tricky part because there is no fixed rule for this, unfortunately. We are pretty sure not so many Koreans know the exact answer. But let's make our own rule together and use it until you become more fluent. Okay? We'll let you know what the National Institute of the Korean Language would answer to this question, but don't be so disappointed because there is no rule. They said what sounds more natural when you speak is the correct one. And we'll tell you how learnflylove.com thinks about this. And let's make a one rule for this together. Let's see the first sentence. Are you eating? It's in the present continuous tense and we use the verb eat. How do you say this in Korean? Yes, 먹고 있어요? 먹고 있어요? More specifically speaking, this is the translation of the are eating part. This part consists of two predicates, 먹고 and 있어요. 먹고 is from the basic form 먹다, and the higher respect form of it is 드시다. 드시다. It's a totally different word. Be careful. It's not 먹시다. We told you already. And 있어요 is from the basic form 있다, which means to be at a location, to exist, to stay still, or a current situation remains going on. That's how it makes a present continuous tense. You know that. This 있다 also has a special higher respect form, 계시다, 계시다. So when you make a sentence like, my father is in the room, you use this higher respect form, 계시다, because the subject, your father, is much older than you and he deserves your respect. Okay? Then what would the National Institute of the Korean Language say if you ask about making higher respect forms with the two predicates or more than two predicates combined at the end of the sentence? What they say is very confusing because they say there is no fixed rule for using higher respect form in Korean. But they say normally you turn only the last predicate into higher respect form because using higher respect form for every each predicate is not appropriate all the time. Which means, anyhow, it is okay to turn both of the predicates or every each predicate into higher respect form in some cases. Very confusing, isn't it? Let us rephrase it and make it simpler. What they say is, you can turn both of the predicates or every each predicate into higher respect form, but in many cases, you turn only the last predicate into higher respect form. But there are exceptions. Now, is it easy to understand? No, not at all. What they say is too political. They answer like that, maybe because it's also hard for them to explain all the cases and exceptions. It's too complicated to explain about what the National Institute of the Korean Language say about using higher respect forms. In a nutshell, what they say is, it is okay for you to turn only the last predicate into higher respect form in many cases. But sometimes you should turn both of the predicates into higher respect forms, especially when the main predicate has a special or irregular higher respect form because it sounds natural that way. Then let's apply this indication. If you turn only the last predicate into higher respect form, 먹고 있어요 becomes 먹고 계시다. 먹고 계셔요 or 먹고 계세요. And if you turn both of the predicates into higher respect forms, it becomes 드시고 계셔요 or 드시고 계세요. Which one to use? Based on what they say, you should use the last one, 드시고 계세요, with the higher respect forms of the both of the predicates because the main verb 먹다 has a special higher respect form, 드시다. Then what if we use the verb go, 가다? The higher respect form of it is 가시다, 가시다. And it's conjugated regularly, which means it doesn't have a special higher respect form. What they say is you don't use the higher respect form of the first predicate 가다 and say 가고 계시다, 가고 계셔요, or 가고 계세요 with a higher respect form of only the last predicate. Because 가다 doesn't have a special or irregular higher respect form, and it would sound overly polite if you use the higher respect form for the both of the predicates. Okay, we can accept that. If it's true, it's a little bit clearer now. But it's still hard to remember and not sure if there are exceptions or not. We think what the National Institute of the Korean Language say is not realistic because in reality, people add 시 sound to every each predicate when they want to sound more polite. And people even make a mistake adding 시 sound only to the first predicate sometimes. So 먹고 계세요 with the higher respect form of only the last predicate and 드시고 있어요 with a higher respect form of only the first predicate, and 드시고 계세요 with the higher respect forms with both of the predicates, they all sound fine to me, whatever the National Institute of the Korean Language say. But we know you want to have one fixed rule. So don't think too much. No need to remember anything on this page. Let's just move on to the next page. Oh, by the way, when you want to use the predicate 있다 to mean the verb to have, you cannot use the higher respect form 계시다. 계시다 is the higher respect form of to be at a location. Okay? Very good. Let's see the next sentence. Will you eat? We use the modal will this time. How do you say this in Korean? 먹을 거예요? 먹을 거예요? Right? This 먹을 거예요 part also has two predicates, 먹을 and 예요. 거 is a part of the predicate here, but it's actually not a predicate. We're not going to talk about it here, but it's a dependent noun and very important element. Therefore, we'll learn about it very soon. 먹을 is, of course, from the verb 먹다, eat. And 예요 is the predicate we used for the English sentence pattern number 3. We didn't use it to say something or someone is something in this sentence, but anyway, it's the same 예요. And you also know 예요 is used when there is no final consonant in the formal block, and 이예요 should be used when there is a final consonant in the formal block. And you are supposed to know how it became 예요 and 이예요 from the basic form 이다. We learned all about these in the main lesson. Please do not pretend that you don't know. The higher respect form of 이다 is 이시다. 이시다. we simply added the 시 sound to the original stem. So it's a regular conjugation, but irregularly it becomes 세요 and 이세요 in the higher respect form. You know that. The National Institute of the Korean Language would say, because 이다, 예요, 이에요 is a predicate particle or auxiliary predicate. Whatever the term is, it's not a verb nor an adjective. So when you turn this 먹을 거예요 into a higher respect form, you should turn only the first verb part into a higher respect form. 드실 거예요. 드실 거예요. Yeah, okay, it makes sense. But we think even though you also turn the last predicate 예요 into the higher respect form, 세요, no one will find an error in your sentence when you speak because nobody knows the rule. So 드실 거세요, 드실 거세요 will be fine, we are sure. The difference from the first page is you cannot just leave the first verb 먹다 in a normal form. You must turn the first verb into the higher respect form at least, because it's the only real verb among these two predicates. Okay? Don't think too much. Let's go on to the next page. Let's take a look at this sentence then. Are you going to eat? 먹을 예정이에요? It also has two predicates, 먹을 and 이에요. 예정 is just a noun, which means a schedule or something prearranged. 먹을 is, of course, from the verb 먹다. And you know where 이에요 came from? Yes, 이다. This is the tricky one. The National Institute of the Korean Language says you can turn the first verb 먹다 into a higher respect form, or you can also turn both of the predicates into the higher respect forms. So, 드실 예정이에요 with the higher respect form of only the first predicate, and 드실 예정이세요 with the higher respect form of both of the predicates, they are all fine. Why? Why this time it's okay to turn the last predicate 이에요 from 이다 into a higher respect form? That doesn't make any sense. They say because it sounds natural in this case. What? It shows the fact that there is no particular rule for this in Korean. Now I understand why we don't believe what the National Institute of the Korean Language says. So let's make our own rule on the next page together. First of all, we'd like to say that it's not like we repel what the National Institute of the Korean Language says. It's a national institute. What they say must be correct. But they are just dealing with this case by case, so sometimes they don't give us one consolidated answer. Plus, they also accept the fact that it is not easy to make one rule for making higher respect forms. And second of all, we like to say that what we are going to tell you might not be the perfect answer, but we can tell we did the extra effort to make it as easy and simple as possible to give you the best answer. Okay? We'll give you one basic rule, and then we'll show you the list of the rules in the order of priority. So if you want to remember just one rule, just remember the first one. It's totally fine. The first rule, it's no-brainer. When you see two predicates or even more than two predicates combined together, mostly a main verb plus an assistant verb, please follow this rule. When you want to make a higher respect sentence, you must be talking about someone who deserves it. For example, someone who is much older than you, or who takes socially much higher position than you, or someone you don't know very well. In those cases, you can turn every each predicate into higher respect form, even the predicate particle, 이다, 이에요, 예요, no matter what the National Institute of the Korean Language says. Because the purpose of using higher respect form is to show more respect to the subject or object of the sentence. So you don't have to worry about being overly polite. You can add 시 sound to every each predicate. Just do it. We are absolutely sure that it will work, especially in spoken Korean. Of course, it will work in written Korean too, normally, because nobody really knows the exact rule for this. People just think that you are very polite by adding 시 sound to every each predicate. They wouldn't think that your sentence is wrong or overly polite. So if you want to remember one fixed rule, just remember that you can turn average predicate into higher respect form when you want to show more respect to the subject of the sentence. The National Institute of the Korean Language would not agree with this. We know. We are not saying that this is the perfect answer either. The National Institute of the Korean Language says turning all the predicates into higher respect form is not appropriate all the time. But they also say that it is hard to make one fixed rule for this. So when we cannot have the one rule, we can't help breaking the rule sometimes. Plus, nobody knows the exact rule. So we are 100% sure that you will not sound weird to most of native Koreans. Now we're gonna tell you the additional rules. We've listed the rules in the order of priority. Of course, the priority can change depends on how you think. It is not the guideline or direction from the National Institute of the Korean Language. We made this rule. But it will work, we are sure. Before you see the additional rules, we'd like to tell you that Korean higher respect form is more about culture, relationship, and the situation than just a rule. Therefore, you should rather learn it by doing. And you should also know that higher respect form is not just for someone who is much older than you or who takes socially much higher position than you. You can use higher respect form to anyone who you think deserves it actually. So you can even use it to someone who is younger than you or just 1 year older than you. It's your choice, okay? Okay, then let's take a look at the additional rules that we've prepared for you. First, you turn only the last predicate into a higher respect form. Normally, it sounds fine, especially when you think the subject doesn't deserve full respect or when you don't think you have to use full higher respect form because he or she is not old enough or not socially higher enough. Or you think he or she is quite close to you so that it might be awkward for you to use full higher respect form to them, regardless of the age and social position. So you turn only the last predicate into a higher respect form when you feel that the full higher respect form might be too much. Okay? Second, when the main predicate has a special higher respect form, you turn the main verb into a higher respect form too, together with the assistant predicate. For example, 먹다 has a special higher respect form, 드시다. So when you want to turn 먹고 있어요 into a higher respect form, please turn both of the predicates into higher respect forms. 드시고 계시다. 드시고 계시다. Third, when you want to sound even more polite, you can turn average predicate into a higher respect form. This is the same as the first basic rule, right? It's no harm for you to sound very polite in most of the cases. Even being overly polite would be appreciated anywhere. Okay? Fourth, you don't have to turn the assistant predicate into a higher respect form if it is not directly related to the action or state of the subject. This one can be a little bit tricky, but you'll be able to know what it means more clearly later. We'll show you the example with the predicate 이다 for the moment. 하실 거예요. 하시다 is the higher respect form of the verb 하다, which means to do. 예요 is a predicate, but it is not a verb nor adjective actually. It is a predicate particle. It is not the action nor state of the subject. It's not even directly related to the subject's action, 하시다. It is just used as a grammatical element to indicate this is the thing which is going to happen in the future. So you don't have to turn it into a higher respect form. Okay? The fifth, but when this predicate 이다, 이에요, 예요 is used alone as a main predicate in the sentence, you should turn it into a higher respect form because there's no other predicate that can show more respect. Okay? Please remember these 5 rules if you can. We can make it more complicated than this, and we can show you more rules, but we think this is enough for you for now. Anyway, you should consider the situation and the relationship with the subject when you use higher respect form. Therefore, It's not something you can learn with the letters. You need to actually use them and hear how the native Korean speakers actually say. Let us say one more thing. You normally don't use a higher respect form for a thing. You use higher respect form only for a human. However, you can use higher respect form for possessions, belongings, body parts, or something directly related to someone who deserves higher respect forms. Let's talk about this again when we see the actual example then. Okay, thank you very much. See you in lesson 6 then. 안녕히 계세요.